Tony Award goes to
The Outsiders.
So, I'm not the kind of person who watches these award shows, especially since they cut out announcing the technical awards during the main show. I just haven't found much desire to watch them. But when my good friends at Musicals and Cheese said they were going to be doing a watch party for them, I figured it would be fun for the heck of it. If not, I get to hang out with friends for the night. I ended up coming in late and missed a good chunk of the beginning, but I was there for the Water for Elephants, which I will be getting to at some point, and The Outsiders when they did their performances. Today, though, I thought we would celebrate The Outsiders' win for Best Musical and break down how they did the rain effect on stage. Water on stage isn't the most common thing in the world. When it comes to rain, many smaller production houses might tend to go with gobos and or projections work to mimic the look of rain, instead of having a whole water system rigged up above the actors' heads on stage. For the theaters wanting the little extra bit of immersion in their productions, like how the Tonys did in their show, you need three things: the supply, the delivery, and collection. Because we can't see the rigging above the stage during the show, I'm going to have to make some educated guesses here. And yes, it's incredibly evident they did use water during the show, as you can see the actors are left drenched from it, and you can see it in some of the shots. Supply is pretty easy, as it's likely just hooked up to the building's water supply, as all you need is pressure to get, and you can get that from basically any tap. With delivery, though, you can tell a few things from the broadcast. First things first, the water stays within the raised portion of the stage, which I suspect is probably an absorbent mat that helps keep the water from falling on the stage and keeping it to that one area. You can see in other points in the broadcast that the section of the stage right at the front has a high-gloss finish and would likely get very slippery if it got wet. Now, with delivery, there's a few things to take note. One are the available poles that the theater has that they could rig up a rain system to. In the rigging world, we call them battens. And they are the ones on stage that run parallel to the front of the stage. Most rigging done on stage is secured directly onto those. Battens can be one of two things, either dead hung or rigged to fly. Basically, the first can't be moved up and down, and the latter can, given that it is much, much, much easier to rig something on the ground and then fly it up. I imagine they're on rig-to-fly battens. Secondly, when you see it on camera, the area in which the rain falls is very controlled. When building a rain system, you're basically making a giant shower head. Instead of it being round like a normal one that you see in most bathrooms, I imagine this one is either a single batten across or in a square. Why I'm thinking it's set up in this way is how the rain falls and stays confined to the absorbent mat on stage. The rain falls in a way that looks more layered than falling in a cylinder. I don't know if there's another batten of it rigged up that we don't see from the view from the wings. And lastly, collection. I imagine there was some sort of grate that was exposed underneath the mat that would allow the water to fall through the stage instead of pooling on top. But, you know what, it would have been great to find out a bit more about how they did that. If it was possible to watch the broadcast without the commercials so you can see the crew changing the set, but no, they must make it difficult. Gee, I'm not salty about this at all. Now, when it comes to the stage, given the videos I've seen, I'm not particularly certain that that particular stage in that theater has a rake. A rake in a stage is when it is slightly slanted towards the audience. If you were to say, put a marker perpendicular to the edge of the stage at the back, it would roll all the way to the front. If there is a rake, it's not a very major one, as this particular stage is mostly used for ballet. A rake in a stage used for ballet would be, or at least would be, far more difficult to balance on. If you look at the plans for the building, you can see the space under the stage. That could be where the water was drained to. Previous productions that had used water on stage are like Singing in the Rain back in 2011. That used what I've most commonly seen as the way to collect fallen water on a stage, and that's with a shallow pool. This works great if you want to have the water splash around and become an actor in and of itself, But this scene, as it's supposed to be a fight in the rain, a pool isn't the best in technical direction-wise for that. Plus, you'd still have to drain said pool before moving it off stage between performances, and I don't think they would have had time to do that during this particular live show. One of the smaller effects that definitely worked better on that TV broadcast than it did on stage to the audience at the time was during the fight scene. They weren't bloodied or bruised prior to it, but when they left the stage, they were. I imagine the way this was done is that there was powder on their knuckles and their faces that when the rain started, it mixed with the powder, allowing it to look like they were punched with a lot more force. Now, I really only say that it worked better for the TV broadcast. That was because we could get up closer than the people in the audience could. This is also a theater with 5 or 6 levels to it. I can't imagine that small of a detail may have translated as well to the people up at the top than it did to us, sitting behind our screens at home. One thing that would have translated very well to everybody in the audience were the lighting choices that were used for simulating the thunder and lightning during the storm, as well as what I am going to assume were gunshots. I do want to preface this by saying I've only ever worked lights for one show, but I will try and explain this in a way that would make my lighting professor from college proud, I hope. Most people are used to seeing lighting, especially stage lighting, that's coming down onto the actors from an angle. The way that the Outsiders turned this around was by having the lights exactly level, or about level, with the actors. They were likely hung from that first balcony. Putting the lights like this gave it the look like a deer in headlights, lighting up the entire actor, and that adds the extra punch that each actor receives. It really does put the emphasis behind it. On top of that, they also had lighting in the wings. Between all 3 sources, the actors were completely lit up, while leaving most of the set still in the darkness. You can see one of them from here in this Tony clip. Personally, I would love to see what the plots looked like. The plots, by the way, are in technical theater, are the plans for a show that show the lighting setup for it. I would love to see them for the Tonys at some point in my life. I would be curious to see how they set it up to have all the lighting available for each different show without having to make them all look the same. I imagine a lot of the moving fixtures and LEDs were used so that you can get the colors more changed easily. But who knows, they may have even used scrollers on the lights. Maybe one year I'll be able to get down to NYC and see them in person and be able to give more information about it. But hey, who knows what the future holds. Thank you guys so much for making it through this video and for my less than regular uploads recently. I've got a lot of big things coming at the end of the summer, but until then, I hope you'll stay tuned. And if you aren't subscribed at this point, I would love it if you did. And until next time, this is Backstage Science signing off.